Okay, we are live. I think we're live. Yeah, it says up there 9 seconds now, 10 seconds, 11 seconds. So we're live Monday through actually every Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. My wife is not here. I had a little technical difficulty because we're streaming out on Facebook and LinkedIn and a lot of other sites. And the system did not allow me to push it out to LinkedIn. So I had to delete that so I can get going on this. Anyway, I want to give an analogy here and see if other people here chime in and get people thinking in terms of this is a hard thing to communicate, but I want to try to communicate it this way. If you're going to hike Kilimanjaro or K9 or some big, huge, high 30,000 foot high mountain, okay, you have what are called base camp and some other different levels. And you say to yourself, if we can get base camp before 4 p.m., get tents up, and then protected during the weather that's coming at night. And if we can get all that done by 4 o'clock, then you have a shot at getting to the next base and to the next base, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you don't hit that target, then you have to get off the mountain or you have to wait another day, and then you're depleted of supplies, and then you get tired and you get groggy and you run too many risks. Well, building is the same way. And I want to kind of talk about that analogy and associate it with building. Whenever you build, you have to think in terms of how soon and efficiently can I get the shell up? It's the same thing as base camp for if you're going to hike a mountain. How soon can I get to base camp? Is the same as how quick and efficient can I get this shell up on the home? Why is that important? Because it's the biggest hurdle. It's one of the biggest challenges that you have. If you can get a shell up and get everything inside protected and dried in, guess what? You can rest, you can relax, and you can regroup, you can think, you can plan. It's the same thing with hiking a major mountain that's 30,000, 31,000 feet high. If you can get to a certain elevation, it could be 12,000, 14,000 feet, and that could be your base camp. And if you can get there and get camped up and situated, now you can relax, you can plan, and you can see how you're going to organize for the next day. And a lot of owner builders don't think in those terms. They think of how slow they can go. And then as a result, prices start to increase, things are out of whack. It's not the same thing to think how slow you can go. And I've seen a lot of owner builders go way so slow to the point where it's just time consuming. It's costly. Like I've been to jobs where an owner builder will tell a subcontractor, well, don't do that part yet because I'm still thinking about that. I'll go to a job and I'll see that there's some drywall not done. Well, we decided not to do that yet because I'm still thinking about electrical. So I just told the subcontractor to hold off there and then make him wait. And I've seen owner builders do that over and over and over again. And as a result, it's more costly. Mistakes happen. And it's the same thing with hiking a mountain. You're getting up to the 15,000 foot level and you don't get there in time, or you were slow to get there because you were plotting your way, you're thinking about stuff, and you had a long lunch and you camped out on a long lunch. You didn't think very much. And then the weather set in faster than you were planning. And then all of a sudden you couldn't hit base camp. It's the same thing with building a home. You have to think about how quick, how efficient can I get this shell up? And this is how I think as a builder. When I'm framing a home, although I have a lot of mechanical to do and I got to punch through the roof, I'm thinking in terms of how efficient and how quickly can I get the roof dried in, because that protects everything. That allows you to sleep at night, allows you to relax just a little bit. Oh, nothing's going to get destroyed. We're going to be okay. I've built in climates where they're framing and a snowstorm comes and we've got a foot of snow laying throughout the framing structure, on the floor, on the substrate, on the TNG flooring, everywhere. And it's an absolute nightmare because I would have clients that would slow me down and say, I want to rethink that. Can we just hold on? I'm going to think about it. tonight, and then we'll decide if I want to put that wall up or what have you. And you can't think like that at that stage of the game. When you're trying to get to the 15,000 foot level, and that's considered base camp, you have to move efficiently to get there. Then you can slow down. And I tell this to clients a lot of the time. Clients, if you want to make changes, I need to know now before I start framing, but not during the course of framing, because that really throws things off. After framing, I get it dried out. I want to make some changes inside, fine. But I'm going to move to get to base camp. I'm going to get there as quick and effectively as I possibly can, because then I can stop, I can slow down, I can start to move into a cash position, or I can cash flow it. But that's the biggest chunk, and a lot of owner builders don't want to spend that big chunk. They don't want to get the foundation, they don't want to get the framing, they don't want to get all that dried in on the roof and spend that amount of money. I've seen OSB on roofs just get completely toasted and wasted because owner builders can't think. They can't make decisions sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes they get so slow they don't see the damage happening to a home. And I was thinking about this when I saw a job that an owner builder was doing, and I saw that roof literally get toasted in 2 months' time when they didn't get it dried in, and a lot of damage had occurred. And OSB will start to flake, and it'll start to fall apart faster than you can shake a stick at it, because they don't move at it. They don't see that things are happening. And if you're you're not getting to base camp, and you've got 15 people behind you, and one's not doing well and they're slowing down the rest of it, it's affecting everybody. So I wanted to help you think that if you can get to that base camp, if you can get to the dried in stage and it's dried in, that to me is the magical place to be, because then you can pull back, rest, relax. I've got a house behind me I'm building, and I knew that we were going to run into some issues. So we put ice and water shield over the entire roof. That ice and water shield has been holding now for almost 4 months now, because we haven't put the roof on it. All the mechanical's done, and I'll do a video on this to talk to people about. But I did the right thing to make sure that everything's protected. I didn't put garbage stuff on the roof like tar paper or something like that and let it damage the rest of the roof underneath that. I got to the base camp. It cost me a little bit more, but it was worth it, because now the clients are able to rest and relax, get into a cash flow position, and now move forward. But I'm mentioning all this because when you tell an owner builder, sorry, you've got to get to base camp and it's got to be today, they get fearful about that and they get stressed out. You can't. You got to move and hustle and get to that dried in phase as quick as you possibly can. We're getting a lot of questions here. Let me jump to that. I may come back to that. I just wanted to help you understand, as a builder, I'm trying to move effectively through that big chunk of issue, which is the framing stage, and get to it as soon as I possibly can. All right. Let's take some questions here. Dark Very 2194. Is Comfort Block a good alternative to Omni Block? Comfort Block interlocks vertically, so mortar is only required on the bottom layer, while adhesive is applied to the other layers. No mortar vertically. I'd have to take a look at that. I'm actually was given a call by the president of Omni Block. He's going to be on our show, our live chat. He may even chime in tonight. I told him to just chime in anytime he wants. But we're going to have Denny on. We're going to talk about Omni Block. And right away, I can tell you that Omni Block is probably more than likely superior without even looking at this other block, because Omni Block has a thermal break in it. And we'll talk about that with Denny, plus a lot of other factors as well. I just love Omni Block because there's so many value points to it. I will look at Comfort Block, and we'll get back to that. But I'm almost certain that there's not two, let alone one thermal break inside the Comfort Block. And that's where Omni Block is really superior. It has two thermal breaks in that block. Let's go to the next question here. That's making an assumption without looking at every factor, but I haven't seen any other block with two thermal breaks in it. This is Alex HHLSC. Got plumbing vent question. Standing seam roof. I don't want to have 6 roof penetrations. I am thinking of run all vent pipes into one spot at the top of the roof and cover it with decorative cupola. you may not have the proper ventilation you need. There's a reason why vents are designed and parsed out the way they are. Most homes are somewhere around two, some or around three or four vents, and you need to have the proper vent. You can do what's called a Studer vent, and a Studer vent is without penetration in the roof. It's just internal, right there behind the sink. And talk to your plumber if you can do a Studer vent, because you don't want those penetrations. And I can agree with you on the standing seam. The penetration in the standing seam is not clean. That's the one thing with standing seam. They literally have to put a boot right over the pipe, and it has to sit on top of the standing seam. And then they have to caulk it with a gasket and really bolt it down. And to me, that's not necessarily the best. You want something that can slip underneath the shingle or be hidden, and not have to have any actual penetrations that are exposed to the elements. But look into Studer vents and you see if your code would allow for that. I've actually done Studer vents quite a bit here and there for other reasons, but the roof penetration is a good one. Okay. It's Alex, a standing seam roof. I don't like idea of 6 vent pipes in the roof. I agree. I don't like that either. If you can try to avoid that, try to do that. How do you handle waterproofing when stucco is applied directly to mass walls like OmniBlock? I'm using Perfect Block, similar to OmniBlock, but ICF, and plan to do stucco or lime plaster directly on it. The area of worry is the transition from the polyiso foam, which is the ICF, insulated concrete form, and the actual foundation, which is your concrete foundation. That's your weak part. If you can seal that 6 inches up on the polyiso ICF form, and then 4 inches or so right onto the concrete, if you can seal that gap, you're in better shape. That's your weakest spot, to be honest with you. That's the weakest spot on all construction technologies, trying to seal that up. I was with a gentleman today, and I might do a video on it, Aero Barrier, and he actually showed me Aero Barrier, and it does seal up underneath the bottom plate and the foundation, but it doesn't go on the outside 4 inches up and on the outside 4 or 6 inches down with a mesh product. You've seen my videos. I've done that product many times. It's a decking product. There's other products that are out there, but to me, I'd rather seal the outside of that. That way, if water comes up in your home and you're in like Florida, I built a home down by the river down in southern Utah, very close, and I was very concerned with flooding. And I said, we're going to seal this outside, but we're going to go up about 1.5 feet. So if water came up against the house, all they'd have to do is sandbag the doorway on that back door. And if water came up against that house 1.5 feet, it's not getting inside, period. Not getting inside at all. And so that's where I like to seal up, is that foundation transition. There's a lot of good products on it. So good question. Let's go to the next one. I have an idea to run all pipes to the ridge and convert them with decorative cupola. You can do that. You can also run them in the chimney. A lot of high-end, very ski communities, especially ski in, ski out communities, they will not allow you to penetrate the roof at all. They will make you take all those vents and put them in one massive chimney. Even your gas vents, air vents, even what's that poisonous gas called? Forget the name of it. All that is run right into the chimney. And you can run 2 or 3 vents right inside that, but we're talking 3.5 feet wide this way, maybe 4.5 feet wide that way. Just a big, and then a nice chimney cap on top of that. And all your vents are just running up parallel inside that. So you can do that too if you have a chimney. So it's something to think about. Some HOAs require that. Okay, Michael Libaninsky. I'm having a hard time finding a mason to lay OmniBlock. Job site is Eastern Shore, Virginia. Eastern Shore, Virginia. Suggestions. Yeah, go to a commercial site that is building with any ICF or any CMU wall, concrete mortar wall, any CMU project, high schools, government projects, they all use that terrible CMU product. It's the same technology, literally the same technology. Only OmniBlock has the thermal break and the insulation inside the block. So drive around and find out. You want a structural mason, a mason that is familiar with bond beams. And a bond beam is nothing more than
Melissa Kelsch.
a special rebar above and concrete and that kind of thing. And then that if they know how to do a bond beam over a window, over a door, over any penetration, if they know how to do that, then they can work with OmniBlock. It shouldn't be a problem. They shouldn't be scared. And I've found that there's a diminishing skill set in masonry because masons like to do walls. Just give me a wall, I'll do a wall for you, but they're not as skilled at construction of buildings. And the ones that are those that are in the commercial side. So I've had some luck with finding masons at commercial jobs, and they bid things out for me, and it's worked out okay. So the other thing is check with Denny at OmniBlock, and he can give you a list of people nationwide. Okay. GF Murphin, as a licensed builder in Maryland struggling to finance my own home build, I'm considering pivoting to building a spec home first to sell and then rolling that into my personal build. Let's see some more. How would you approach funding and structuring that first spec project? Well, it's kind of tricky. You have to qualify as a first-time home buyer, that kind of thing, and then you have to own it for 2 years before you can sell it. But as a builder, that's not the case. However, there's some lending stipulations that make it so that you can't necessarily do that. You can, but you don't want to let the lender know that you're going to sell the home. That's typically a different lender or different kind of loan. What I would do is go into banks and just find out what you can qualify for, and then see if you can't do a spec. The minute you say the word spec, banks get a little scary, and they'll typically want to charge a higher interest rate. So you might want to talk to a broker, not to a bank. Talk to a broker and find out from the broker what that broker would suggest. But I know a lot of builders do this. They build up enough cash flow. They have enough cash. They do 1 or 2 specs a year, and those specs are good. Let me get this door open. Sorry, that was the fire chief. I offered some service to spread some gravel out, and they want me to he's going to get more dirt there and gravel. So I'm doing a little service project, and it was the fire chief at my door there. Funny. Yeah. Just do some investigation, talk around, find around. That's hard, the first one to do, but a lot of owner builders are a lot of move in that direction, and they end up. I have an owner builder right now. He's building a 20,000 square foot home, and he's can make money on it if he can sell it. Right now, high-end homes, big homes are selling in my particular market because there's so many boomers retiring, and they've got money, and they'll pay the money for these higher-end homes. So know your market on top of that, and go talk to a realtor and find out from the realtor what the market's like, and they will really help you out. So if you were in my market, I would tell you where to go and who to talk to, and you're not in my market, so it's kind of hard. Michael, Alex, look into AAV air admittance valves. Gets you to one roof protrusion, which is used code required. Yeah, look into that. That's a good one there. Let's see, Doug in Utah. Please talk about foundations that don't have footings formed separately, just as trench that filled with concrete when pouring the slabs. Cedar City. Please talk about foundations that don't have footings formed separately. Let me see. Yeah, those are kind of hard. You have to pour the footing first, and then you box in the actual foundation after that. And the footing can be a nightmare. I know some concrete subcontractors that refuse to pour directly in dirt. They want to form it up because they can get perfect elevation by doing so. Other subcontractors, they will dig a footing and then they will go and put a chalk line, not a chalk line, but a spray can of paint indicating where the elevation is. But the problem is that elevation has a 2 to 3 inch variation. Where's that concrete going to be? And he just kind of guesses midway through that spray can that's sprayed horizontally inside that ditch. And it's he gets his accuracy later when he forms up the form, and he just lifts the form up here and there, and it might be at an inch or two above the actual footing at some point here and there. So he gets his elevation later. Others don't like that, and that's really hard to do with basements, because if you've got a basement, 11-foot basement form sitting there, and it's the footing is not perfectly level, that's going to make their job really, really hard. So you have to find out what kind of form is going to be put on top of the footing after the fact. If it's a slab on grade and they can hit their grade and hit their elevation perfectly, then all power to them. But if they can't, I've seen so many different styles in concrete, it would blow your mind. Every single contractor that I've worked with does it differently. And you need to it would be helpful if you just sit down and say, hey, explain to me your process so I can think through it and I can be prepared for it, rather than show up on a job site and be, wow, I didn't think you'd do it this way. So ask them. And if you're comfortable with that way, then great. All right. But just a trench that filled with concrete when pouring the slab in Cedar City, yeah, it's tricky. If the soils are good, great. If the soils are terrible, that's even more of an issue. Like I told my concrete guy, please, after you trench, wet everything down, hold it wet through the night, because he's going to pour early in the morning, because he's pouring in sand. And if that dries out with some wind through the night, all that sand's going to slough right into the trench and make a nightmare. And it was good. He kept it wet. It was awesome the way I wanted it. But again, that's where he scheduled it really tight and he made it work. But if you've got a concrete guy and he comes and digs his trench and it's all sand and it's loose and it's sloughing into the trench and he doesn't have concrete for 3 or 4 days, you're going to see a problem, especially if you've got a horse running through the property like we had the other day ago. Anyway, this is Robert, 8657. I paid the framing contractor to put steel and stick titanium roofing underlayment over my whole roof while he was there, just in case I wouldn't be able to get a roofing crew and supplies. It saved me. Yeah. That is a really, really good idea. And that's the only place I use, what is that product called? The OSB that's got the covering on it, and you put the tape on it. I forget the name of it. It'll come to me later on tonight. That's the only place I use that product, is on the roof, only if I know I've got an issue. Roofers can't get there, and I didn't want my framers to have to put on a cheap little synthetic product. But if they're okay with putting on ice and water shield after the sheeting of that, great. But I know what you're talking about. And if you can get your framers to do that to save on some time and protect the framing structure, because roofers are way far out, great, do it. All right. Get them some chocolate and some donuts and pay them off in food if you can. Comfort Block has the thermal brakes as well. Was just curious because I hate and want to minimize mortar. Yeah, there used to be a company similar to Omni Block, very similar, that was dry stack. And they would actually hit the elevation with pennies. And they would put a penny in there to make sure the block would hit just perfectly. And so, yeah, I'll have to look up Comfort Block. Send me a link in the chat so I can come back and check it out. Basil Kingsley, I'm considering an underdeck cold room beneath my back porch, which is about 50% exposed. Since the foundation is already dug, should I build it or cost or just cover it up? 4,000 square foot home for 2 people in Canada. Let me see here. 50% exposed because an under deck cold room beneath my back porch. Those cold rooms are nice to have if it's already formed, or they can form it up and it's just part of the foundation of the porch. By all means, do it. I had my client wishes that he would have done that on the home we did just down the road from here. And he's got a porch, he's got a concrete deck on the porch, and he wishes he would have just cut that in, 7 feet in this way and created a storage room underneath the porch. And a lot of people do that, and it makes for an easier. It's harder to cap that because you need some corrugated metal on top to cap it and pour the concrete on top of all that. Or you just form it up underneath with wood and all that, and you pour it on top, and then you pull the wood out and do some rebar on there and tie it all together. It's just a little work, but it's nice to have. It's part of the footing, part of the foundation, part of all that extra square footage, and it's not that hard to do. So yeah, you can check into that. I've done that many times, many times. Grabbing extra square foot is an art form. All right. And I'm going to come back and talk about that, how to grab extra square feet and where it might be the best route to go. But that's a good one to do. Parker Mash 4596. So you're not concerned with vapor transmission wicking through above grade mass wall with stucco when the walls get wet from heavy rainstorms. Yes, I am worried about that, but not in my neck of the woods because we do stucco differently. We either put an inch of polyiso foam, which is a closed cell foam product, which means nothing's getting through that. And then there's a vapor barrier on the other side of that. But I don't do it that way. I like to do stucco with mineral wool, at least an inch of mineral wool, and it acts as the full lath product. So you got your paper, you got your mineral wool, and you staple that on. Then you put your wire mesh on top of your mineral wool, and then when you do the gray coat, it squishes it in there, and it binds to the fibrous material of the mineral wool. Polyiso foam doesn't have that capacity, although it can bind to it. It doesn't bind to it nearly as well when you have the without the fibrous material, and that's why I like the mineral wool behind that. A lot of places in California, they don't put any insulation on the outside where they bind their stucco to it. It's straight up lath. It is 2 layers of maybe a tar paper and wire mesh, and then they squish in the gray coat or the brown coat, called different terms in different parts of the country. That's it. And then they do the finished color coat after that. Maybe 2 coats, if not just 1 coat. And to me, that is a recipe for disaster because you got all the penetrations through that that tar paper, and eventually some water would wick its way through that, especially with the J channel. If the J channel is not dropped, there's a J channel. It's got a hook on the bottom like that, and then all the stucco sits inside that, and there's holes at the bottom of the J channel, and that J channel is dropped to just about 3/4 to an inch or more below the framing structure of the home, and it passes over the concrete foundation. So if water wicks off that stucco, it comes down into the J channel, hits the holes in the J channel, and drips past the foundation. It doesn't wick into the home. Now, if they put that J channel too high and it can wick back into the home, then you got a problem. So those are your weak spots. It's that there. And then if you don't have any insulation, a lot of places in California, they don't use foam, or they don't put, they're just cheap. And a lot of it's because there's too much moisture, and polyiso is a closed cell product. So it doesn't allow for drying out. And so if you've got humidity behind that polyiso foam and it's building up, you can have some rot. That's why I love rock wool. It's mold proof, fireproof, and it breathes. And the more you can have your home breathe, the better off you're going to be. So long way to say it, but you got my point on that one. Stevie Lund. I had a friend named Eric Lund. I've been trying to find him. He was a friend in high school a long time ago. At what point in the construction timeline do you grind and polish a concrete exposed aggregate floor? Within 4 hours. All right. You're going to want to expose that aggregate with a power washer within about between 3 and 4 hours, depending upon how much of a slump the concrete is, and if you put any elixir in it to make it solidify faster. But you're going to want to power wash it. Now, keep in mind that's going to have some undulations, and it's going to be like walking on gravel in a little way. But you've now got that aggregate exposed, and then they just come and do a light grinding after the fact. Or you can just not do that and then grind it, but there's a lot more grinding to do. But if you can expose it just a little bit with a power washer, then you can do that. They do that with a lot of pool decks. They'll just pour concrete, wait for 2 hours after they've got it nice and smooth. Then they'll come in and power wash it real quick to expose some of the aggregate. So not something I recommend in cold climates, because water can get inside that aggregate, little pebbles, and then it can reach inside there. And when it freezes, it starts to pop up. So it's not something I recommend in cold climates where you have freezing, just for that reason. Okay. SBS build. Can the framer install waterproofing? If it is going to take a few months for the roofer to start the job. Yeah. Can the framer install waterproofing if it is going to take a few months for the roofer to start the job? Yeah. And that's why I use an ice and water shield over the entire roof. It's not going to blow off on the wind. It's going to stick, especially a peel and stick ice and water shield. And there's a lot of good products out there. I can't recommend anyone, but there's a lot of them, and all the box stores have them. So if they can put that on there and pay them a couple $100 to do it, and then deduct that off of the framer, off of the roofer, so they don't have to install that, then great, work it out. Zip, thanks, Basil. It's Zip System. The only place I use Zip is on the roof, if I ever do use it, because that product is waterproof, and then they just put the tape and they roll the tape on there, and you're good to go. And that would be really fast for framers. They put the Zip System on the roof, then they tape it over with the roller. You got to make sure you roll that in there, because it's got some like a rubber on the backside that's almost like it's like a peel and stick product, and you're pushing it inside that transition. And if they get that in there right, the water is going to come right off that roof. It's going to be great. Right? Yeah, SB, Zip System. Everyone's chiming in now because they're all remembering at the same time. He'll put the link in the comments. Great. And I'll have to check that out. David B, hit the like button if you like the stream. Yes, please do. I appreciate that, everyone. Okay. 2-car garage that we don't. This is from the MA Pearl. 2-car garage that we don't intend to park in. Are control cuts needed, and how do you cover them? Yeah, I would still put the control cuts in there, because you're going to crack no matter which way you shake and bake it. So if you put the control cuts in there, then after they're done, vacuum them out, and you can put some tape on both sides. If you don't want the caulk to show, put painter's tape on both sides of that control cut, and then you can actually squirt in any kind of expansive caulking, exterior caulking, gray caulking, just about anything will do. You take a putty knife and you smush it in there like that, and then you peel the tape off, and it's nice and clean. And if you're thinking of doing exposed aggregate on your home for inside the home, you're going to want those control cuts. But I highly recommend 4 foot on center, not 10 foot on center. If you do 4 foot on center, it's cleaner. You're going to control your cut, your micro cuts or cracks much better. It's going to look really, really cool. So if you can do that in the garage too, great. At least 10 foot on center. Your 3/4 inch control cuts. Let it dry, let it cure, and then put in some caulking. Okay. See, Parker Nash, you do the mineral wool and lath on the OmniBlock builds? No, you don't need that. Well, the OmniBlock, all you need is your gray coat with some synthetic, it's a glue product they put in the gray coat, and it helps bond to the OmniBlock. And stucco guys do it one of two ways. They take the glue and they paint it right on the OmniBlock, and then they put the gray coat, or they put it in the gray coat material and mix it in there, and then they apply it. And so I see some even just spray it on there. But you're going to want that bonding, extra bonding material on the gray coat because it helps bond right to the OmniBlock. And then they do a finish coat, color coat right after that. And that cures for about a week. And once that's cured, then they do a finish coat, which is a color coat. Okay. ZT Zhang Yang. Have you thought about being other kind of contractor, the home builder, faster project timeline and turnaround? Have you thought about being other kind of contractor than home builder? Faster project time around. I'm not sure. Maybe a subcontractor. And I don't know of any subcontractor work I'd want to do. I've been an electrician, roofer, landscape, framing, concrete, excavation. I've done all that as a subcontractor in those trades, but I'm not interested in doing that anymore. I like to just be the general. I like to be the GC, walking on the job site. But I hope that's what you mean, meaning subcontractor, maybe developer. I'm talking to people right now about a large project, some big projects down the road. So I will keep you guys posted on that, but kind of interesting. Hope that's what you're asking about. Parker, do you do mineral wool and lath before stucco on an OmniBlock? Oh, I think I already answered that one. I don't do mineral wool at all. Not on OmniBlock. Read the specs on your peel and stick to see how long it will last under direct UV. Correct. All right. There is a product called, what's it called? Wolf, or it's called Coyote something. It's a staple down tab that can handle inclement weather for a year. And it was built and designed by roofers for roofers. Has a great bond and grip to it on your feet. It's called Coyote. It's named after a wild dog or something. If it comes to me, I'll remember it. Maybe somebody here will remember it. But it's the best alternative to peel and stick. All right. And it's manufactured in the Midwest. So I know that a lot of Midwest and even the East Coast use it a lot, but not as much out West here. I have to order it. I did used to use it a lot of the time, but I don't use it anymore because I got tired of buying it in bulk. Had to buy it in bulk. Okay, Hype Stonks. Hey, hello, Hype Stonks. Hi, Keith. What underlayment do you install under tile on slab on grade? Under tile on slab on grade. This is for crack isolation membrane. Oh, don't remember that product, but it's a product with a similar mesh product that helps with the expansion on that. Talk with a tile setter and they will tell you what I'm talking about. Ask them, how do you propose covering these cracks? It would help control the crack over time. And there's all kinds of products out there for that. But I wouldn't let them just put the tile on there straight with the mortar and the tile. Just cover those cracks, get them protected, and it would actually help out with the strength of the whole unit, the whole flooring system. So if it comes to me, I'll let you know. But tile guys should know. I'll be using 36 by 30. You're going to want that with that big of a tile. I've got a client putting in 4x8 sheet tile. Can you guys imagine that? 4 feet by 8 feet. That's the size of a sheet of drywall, a sheet of OSB. He's actually laying that down on a slab. That's going to be hard. So if he does it, I'm going to hold him up on my shoulder and say, the most impressive builder I've ever seen in my life. Not just the owner builder, but builder. That's going to be a real challenge for tile setters. So, Parker Nash, have you done a roof with exterior insulation, mineral wool sandwich between sheathing? No, but I can, and I've often thought about it. For those that are living in the Midwest, where you've got tornadoes and stuff like that and falling hail, it might be an advantage to have some sort of an absorptive quality in your roof. I haven't done it. I've been wanting to do it, to be honest with you, but I just haven't found the roofing company or the labor that wants to go the extra mile for me. So the eave also makes it difficult. How do you nail um, uh, rain gutters, stuff like that to it? I haven't really been able to think through the whole thing, but I really like the idea. We do flat roofs all the time here. We do 3 inches of polyiso, so that's not the same, but we've done it with flat roofs all the time. Control cuts on our covered porch as well. Yes. And I would do a cut, a diamond tip blade cut. I wouldn't do a tool cut. A tool cut is a wide V, and if there's any kind of separation, it's just exaggerated. So I do control cut. So make sure the 3/4 of an inch thick down. That's code. That way, if there's a crack, it's going to hopefully go where you control it, where you want it to go. Okay. Contractors like HVAC, plumber, electric. No, deck builder. I don't do any of that. I do sub some of that out to, like I've got I'll get a carpenter that will do stuff like that, and I'll sub it out, but I'll run it under my license, but I don't do the work. As a newly licensed builder in Maryland, congrats there. I'm struggling to finance my own build. I am considering pivoting to build on spec. I think we asked this question earlier, and then rolling that into my personal build. How I talked about this earlier. There's all kinds of ways to shake and bake that. My approach has been that I take old pieces of garbage and I rehab them. And it's easier to get the money that way because you're adding value to the project. And I've taken a Rambler that had an upstairs and a downstairs, and I actually completely gutted the thing, and I put stairs on the outside going to the basement, sealed off the transition from up above and down below from within inside, and create 2 rentals. Very profitable rentals, because now I've got 2 rentals, whereas before it was just one ugly home. And maybe one of these days I should do a video on that. But to me, I try to enter the situation with less cost. And if you can restore something, great. Then you can put your name on it, you can control it, and do some good, wonderful things to the community. We need more rehabilitation in our communities. And then that just gets you one step, and eventually you'll start doing some spec builds. B. Murfin, would you approach funding and structuring the first spec project? Funding and structuring that thing. That's part of that same question. Yeah, the same way I was answering it before. You just see what you qualify for, and you see what you can do. And if you can't qualify for this, can you qualify for that? And if you can't qualify for that, can you qualify for this? I have a home in St. George where my mom lives up front and my carpenter lives in the back. But we lived in the front for the first several years, a handful of years, and it was an old, super old 1919 Pioneer home. We restored that, put an upstairs in it, made all kinds of living space, and then we got room for an addition. It's easier to get money for an addition than it is to get a whole new spec build. Once we got the addition, we moved into the addition, and then we rented the front for a couple of years. Then my mother needed help, and she lives up front. So to me, that's just, you're building equity, building revenue, building opportunity. And one of these days I should just do a master video of mine. We call it the compound, because we got a lot of buildings on that project. So I disconnected hydro before demo. When is the best time to bring a temp line? Do I need to have HVAC running in the winter before the house is done? Only for painting and drywall, and maybe your subcontractors will complain, others will complain, but you can disconnect the water before the demo, yes. When is the best time to bring the temp line in? Before your drywallers, and you probably want it there because concrete's going to need water. So, and have a temp spigot on the outside. If it's too cold, then you wanted to get what's called a frost spigot. That's a spigot that opens up like that, and it drains at the bottom, and it's down 3 feet below frost temp. So if you have a frost spigot like that, great, you know. So planning on a rectangular house with great room at one end, using attic truss is very good. Want no steps on the main floor, 12-foot ceiling in great room, but 10 foot in the rest of the house. Would whole house 12-foot be easier, cheaper? Yeah, it would be, because I don't know what you're going to do about that step. Because if you have a main floor with a 12-foot ceiling in great room and 10 foot in the rest of the house, you've got a 2-foot difference. How are you going to make attic trusses work? For example, the great room is going to be the ceiling higher 2 feet, and then next to it, outside the great room, that's going to drop to 10 feet. That's going to create a 2-foot step in your attics. So if you went with a 12-foot, it's not my recommendation. That's really high. But if you went to a 12-foot and then put across the whole main floor, and then you throw your attic trusses on top of that, that's going to be an even situation, no framing issues, no steps upstairs. It's going to be cleaner to do it that way. But I would go with an 11-foot ceiling down below and then attic trusses on top of that. You're going to make your house look really tall from the outside. So just consider that. Okay. David B. Schluter makes everything for your tile floor. It sure does. Drains, trim, you name it. Even all the underlayment products. Right? It's good stuff. SBS Build, how would you recommend to prepare wood subfloor for tile and or floating floor in living spaces? Well, for the subfloor itself, if you're doing engineered floor trusses, if you talk to the flooring guy or the truss manufacturer in advance and you tell them, this is where I want a shower, can you please recess the trusses 2 inches there? And if they say, yeah, you've got that taken care of, and all I have to do is fill it in with a pan with their base material, and you're good to go there. As for floating floor, I'm not a fan of floating floors, by the way. And it's really, really hard to get them so there's no dead space where, when you bounce a basketball in an old church basketball court and there's some dead spot in there, all those floors are floating if they're not done right, and they just seem dead. So I love glue down floors, and I don't have any problem with them. And I can put cabinets right on top of a glue down floor, but I cannot put cabinets on a floating floor. The manufacturers will not let me do that. The warranty is not valid. It's void, which is kind of stupid, because you can put couches and pianos on a floating floor, but you can't put cabinets. I don't understand that. So, but think about a glue down floor if you can. And then if you're still planning, think if they can do a recessed floor truss for you. If you're using engineered floor trusses, if you're using TGIs, you can't do that. Okay. Maricela Marban. Okay. Hey, Keith, I'm the block home in Southwest Texas. It has a double top plate, and I noticed air leaks. What do you recommend doing to seal air those gaps? Also, would this be done by installation crew? Yeah, installation crew should do it. You can use, I like the Seal product. It's a roll of foam, and they put it on top of the OmniBlock. J-bolts are coming through it, and they put the first plate down on there. The other plate should be glued on top of that double top plate. And then the J-bolt comes through both of those, and it's all crunched down with a plate, a wet washer, square washer, and then a nut on top of that. That would get that really, really sealed. If it's already on and they didn't do that, then you can put some product on that top plate and seal it up at the top, because that will be an air leakage issue. You're going to want to seal that. But your installation crew should be able to do that. But a complete liquid applied product on the outside would really, and come past those top plates, 3-4 inches, just come past and seal up that whole section on the outside. I'm glad you're using double top plate. because if you're putting trusses on there and you're in a windy area with hurricanes and stuff like that, you have all that meat to grab the trusses into, and it's a good option to do. So love to see that. Can you recommend an engineering firm in St. George for my architectural drawing on my ADU? Thank you. Yeah, go to see Jeff Hedman. I'm going to recommend. If you're in the program, he's in the program. Just go to the download section in the self-managed package and you'll see him. But just look up, research Jeff Hedman Engineering. Jeff Hedman Engineering. He's actually licensed in over 40 states, and a lot of my students use him. All right, especially for OmniBlock. If you OmniBlock people are out there, you're probably using Jeff and you're probably using Lonnie. So, okay. Govindra, can't say that. Julu, that's an interesting name. I can't even. That's like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That's the one I can't say. Is swimming pool and a heated floor worth it? What's the best floor other than LVP for a lot of dogs and their drools and nails and floor heating? Tile is not bad. You can easily heat a tile floor the easiest, and you can probably clean it up the best. However, LVP is the best for animals, especially some luxury vinyl flooring out there. But it's harder to heat it without putting the heat in the concrete foundation itself, which is a lot more forethought and planning and all that. But tile is, and I'm going to do some videos coming up. I just met my tile guy, and he's going to start putting some floor heating in 5 showers. We got 5 showers. We're putting some floor heating in, and I'm going to do some videos on that next week. So stay abreast of those videos. They're going to be great. Okay. Doug Utah, hydro is electricity in Canada. Okay. Hydroelectric. I was thinking water. Like we have a hydro flask here in the States. I got my hydro flask, meaning I'm keeping myself liquid. So that's interesting. That's because of hydroelectric dams. That's why. All the different terminology. Like if you say you're pissed, in America it's you're angry, but if you're in Australia, it means you're drunk. So it's interesting. So sorry, by hydro, I mean electricity. Yeah. But still, by hydro, I mean electricity. When is the best time to run a temporary line before having one to the panel? As soon as you possibly can. You're going to want to have what's called a temp power pole at your job site as soon as possible, because a lot of subcontractors are going to need that. And they're going to complain if they don't have that. If they have a new truck, then they're going to have power in their truck. But a lot of the old trucks don't have it. And you might want to ask yourself, concrete and framing, do you have capacity for your own power? Do you have a generator? And if they say no and no, they're going to need power. So check with them real quick. I like to try to avoid the temp power pole if I can and bring power right into the home. This home that I'm on, I was doing the foundation first, and we ran a conduit up through the footing, right along the just outside where the form was going to be, and I hit it just right so that when they pulled the form, I told my electricians, hurry and mount the panel, get the meter on there, and we had permanent power, and I bypassed the temp power. What did that do for me? It saved me like $450. Electricians would charge anywhere from $300 to $800 just to come put a temporary power pole by the power pole, and you have to walk out there. It could be 50 feet, 150 feet. Here it was like 125 feet, and the cords were going to heating up. It wasn't going to work. So I saved money by planning it that way. So that's something that you have to think in advance on. And if you have a conduit coming up out of a foundation and you need to have framing structure there in order to put the meter panel, you might want to tell the framers, go ahead and frame that section first. And if you can hold off not needing power, I can hurry and get the electrician to hurry and put the meter panel in once you have your sheeting on and all that. And sometimes the cities and counties will allow for that, but they won't call it perm power. you are calling it temp power. If you call it perm power, that's associated with your certificate of occupancy inspection. You don't want to call it perm power. You just want to call it temp power. And it's passing all the inspections. You've got your grounding rod. It's got it mounted. The meter sits on it just fine. And just call it temp power, and they should pass you off. And then you can avoid a couple $100 on a temp power pole. Sorry, guys, I go into long diatribes on stuff. So much stuff comes to my head forever. Hello, Michael says hello. Another one says hello. Doug says the best options for waterproof second floor deck to also function as waterproof patio cover over. Thank you for all your advice. It depends on where you're building. There's a lot of liquid applied decking product materials that are out there. Go to a roofing supply company and talk with them about it. I'm going to be doing some video on Tuesday next week, and I'll show you some of the products that I'm putting on some decks. It's a full membrane, but it's concrete. And that means you're not going to have any water drainage through that deck. People that keep building decks that are open slat decks without any full membrane cover, I scratch my head on. I just do not understand that mentality at all. I don't care if it's Trex. I don't care if it's redwood. I don't care how expensive you put it. If there's water that's filtering through that deck, it's destruction. Automatically guaranteed. I don't care how well you make it. It's going to get destroyed over time because water is going to work its way into that structure. I love to have a full membrane on all my decks, and I don't have any problem at all. So I'll be doing some videos on that and talk to you about it. But just look in products for full membrane cover. All right, it's out there, and I'll try to get some more videos on that. So we're running out of time here. Do you have OmniBlock videos yet? Yes, I do. Just go on my site, scan them down there. I've got several OmniBlock builds. I've got over 500 videos. I don't know where they're there. Just scan through them. It would probably be about 2 years ago. I've been on YouTube now for, 4 years, 5 years? It'd be about 2-3 years ago, the most recent home. And then I've done some interviews with OmniBlock. And Denny's going to get on the show here. We're going to try to get him on real quick here. I'm speaking at a conference in Vegas on OmniBlock this fall, and I'll give you guys some updates on that. For temporary power, do you need 110 or 220? You need 220. It's the same thing, really. It's a 200 amp panel you're going to need, but they're just going to come off that meter, and it's going to be a 200 amp service. And then they're going to create outlets, and there'll be 220 outlets. You don't want 110. That's your subcontractor going to be blowing the breaker on that over and over again. So it's going to be 220. 17 more likes, guys. Yes, that would be awesome. Decks, yuck. Uncovered decks, double yuck. If you do a deck, cover the damn thing. Don't get it exposed. Here's what I mean here. I don't know if you can see out there that there's a deck out there and there's a deck out there. It's covered, which means I'm not going to have the weathering and issues, and I can enjoy it on a nice, balmy, rainy day. And then you're not going to have all the excess snow removal. Cover your decks, folks. Don't have exposed decks. Don't have clients for custom home yet. I like decks. What do you think of starting out as a deck builder before becoming a developer? Do that. I can introduce you to a gentleman who can train you and to put on these full membrane concrete decks that are just a cat's meow. And look for my videos on that, and I'll try to have some links in these upcoming videos. But yeah, do decks better than everyone else and make it last longer than what others build. I want to be a GC on my own, but banks want me to hire a GC to get a construction loan. Whatever your state requirements are, go after that. Find out what your state requirements are. A lot of states have laxed their requirements. Go look at that first and see how difficult that is. And when you do become a GC, they can't say anything to you then. You're now a GC. So it shouldn't be hard. It's one step at a time, folks. Getting to base camp, getting to a dry-in, getting to one more stage in the whole project is you just don't give up. If you're going to run a marathon, what do? You start with a half mile. You start with another mile. Then you start, oh, I finally got to 3.5 miles, which is equal to a 5K. Once you do a 5K, you get ready for a 10K race. And when you do a 10K race, you get ready for a 17-mile run. And then you do one run like a couple weeks before the marathon, and it could be 20 miles, maybe 21 miles. And then you get ready for that race day, and you've built up all this capacity as a runner, and you've got all these different base camps, dry ins under your belt to the point where you're really successful. That's really what it's all about, folks. The building is all about knowing what stage you need to get to next and how you're going to get to that next stage. Okay. David B says it should be interesting to see what Trump's federal rules he's trying to pass to help home builds. Yeah, look for that. Look for rural development loans to change. I know he loves to just put liquidity in the market to open up the market to make things happen, but that's also going to affect inflation, folks. It's going to get a kickstart. I believe that Trump's going to inject this nation with something very different economically, and it's going to be a burst of economics, but it's going to have a very, very serious blowback. So if I'm not telling you what advice to take as a financial advisor, I'm just going to tell you what I'm thinking. I'm thinking there's going to be a huge injection of something in our economy, and it's going to get things stirred up, but then it's going to create inflation, and then we're going to have that real crash some other time, sooner than later, but delayed. So in the meantime, now is the best time to build. If everything's good in your life, job, income is stable, no matter what, now is a really good time to build. Labor costs are down, material costs are relatively down. Even though oil is up, it's not really affecting those costs too much. So anyway, we're going to be back here next week, again, 5 to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Sorry for the slow jump start today. I was all by myself, and I eventually figured it out. I'm getting smart with this stuff. But we'll be back here next time. Thanks, everybody, for your questions. That was fun, and you guys take care, and we'll see you next week.